It's Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. I started that way too low. It's that kind of day. It is a multiple coffee day. Coffee. Drinking coffee. I mean, I don't know how you guys remember. It's not showing up on camera, but I can see through this coffee. And that's how I've had to drink coffee since I got COVID and got long COVID, which makes me sad. But that is not what we're talking about today. The comments on the Manly Monday video were pretty powerful. And it made it tough to pick which ones to read. Because if I could, I'd just sit here and just read them all. Because I mean, I'm always really honored when and kind of humbled when I do a topic like that and guys connect to it and share, and I overthink how to respond because it's sort of your story, not mine, and yet I relate, so we're just gonna wing it. Okay, if you like this sort of content, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/Leanna K. 6 people need sessions, 6 people, that's the subsidized list right now. And the patrons have been getting a saga lately. I talked a little bit about the dicking around I had that required me to disinfect my damn computer. I thought I was going to be able to do a video on a really cool game preview and get paid for it. But no, my computer treated it as a Trojan and I had to do a fucking disinfect. The patrons got the larger story about which game it was. So this is the benefits of being a Patreon. I do a deep dive on stuff that is just too spilling tea for my liking on my channel. I don't do drama, okay? Though there may be some drama because I was interviewed by a Washington Post reporter about Hogwarts Legacy. I talked to her for about 35 minutes. They'll probably use 2 lines. So saying that, so if it comes out, you heard it here first. I mean, she seems sympathetic and she seemed open-minded. You just never know with these things. And that kind of stuff used to scare me, but now it's like, hey, my name's in the paper, right? All people remember is that you mattered. And I'm in Slytherin. So, okay. About the Manly Monday, some men being trained to be emotionally stupid. No one said no. Which I thought, I wasn't sure about the title, but it seemed to connect. So good. Biggest problem with that urbanization trend. Get tougher is a very useless teaching, the commenter begins. Stress management and emotions and self-awareness in social situations are way more critical. Yet as youth advertising and old school parenting and gender norms give this get tougher, and girls get much better tools in this respect if they have parental support and those things working. If we were Spartan state near war, get tougher would have real context and those practical applications to work your emotions through those things. Like sport helps some people to work their emotions, social skills, and self-awareness better than talking to a therapist. Leanna said before, Spartan stoic way means processing emotions, not denying or suppressing them. But they got to have some ways suitable for your personality to do that. I always thought growing up relatives in the countryside living in farmhouses would have better skills like these as male. But they're as clueless as me living in the city. So it's a skill which doesn't come by genes, but conscious training, not self-help. Self-awareness develops best by feedback. Otherwise, that trap mentioned develops where we read and twist it to our current behavior, which changes and teaches nothing. And yeah, I mean, I'm somebody who went from very urban and now I live in the woods. There are differences, but I mean, I grew up very urban, and because of the unique stuff affecting Black men and young Black men, there was more talk about emotions where I grew up. Now, that left me somewhat unprepared to navigate proper society, right? Because then we get here, people don't talk about that. I'm like, the fuck you talking about? People don't talk about that. They don't. And I really think I was advising somebody who's about adolescent development this week, and talked about the fact that it's girls are taught that things are innate. And so they said, you're supposed to be good at feelings. And there are a lot of women that aren't. They're not. And because they're supposed to be good, people assume they're good, and it gets all skewed. But girls are sort of encouraged to quit early and hide in the proverbial cave, whereas boys tend to be shoved out, and it doesn't matter how scared you are. There's no talking about it. There's no nothing. It's just get out there. And neither's right. We need to give, like the person said, proper family socialization. Because I was raised in a tough neighborhood, those get strong, get tough were actually useful. And I stand by a lot. It's interesting because when I got into TV, I was taught all my stuff about honor and respect and being honest and being upfront. Oh no, that's wrong. People don't do that. But that was because it was a toxic environment. And more and more that I'm out of that, I'm going back to the way I was raised because it's just better. It's just freaking better. But the expression of emotions with us was done through rap. It was done through dance. It was done through theater. And all of those programs, at least up here, were wiped out in the 90s when they went back to basics, reading, writing, and arithmetic approach. And all those extracurriculars got wiped out either by funding or by the constant fighting between the teachers' unions and the province. And it sucks, and it's left a void because, as the commenter said, and I completely agree, this is why we're sort of I'm trying to figure out how to do this with sort of the online stuff. Just participating in a group functionally can teach you far more about social skills and emotional regulation than a therapist visit. You can't address the socio-environmental element with a therapist. You can't. It's one-on-one. And that's where the weakness, I think, is the fact that so much male socializing is around activities. You don't see straight guys just, let's get together for coffee. They'll go and get drunk together. But it's, let's do this activity. And so people don't talk about their feelings because they don't want to be the downer. And, that's why I was big on the one article I wrote for Polygon that got me labeled a Polygon shill was because they wrote a thing about, mental illness is the villain. And I'm like, no, man, Gears of War and God of War. Because the thing that really struck me about Gears of War is you have all these pug ugly meatheads, but at critical points they go, hey, are you okay? Do you need a minute? And yeah, in the battle it's walk it off, right? But in emotional moments is take some time. Are you okay? And they do show the wreckage internally and how they all sort of deal with it differently. And R.I.P. Dom. But they show Coltrane masking with humor, Baird masking that he's scared shitless with sarcasm and with gruffness. And Marcus is left fucked up. And the new games just don't have that the same way for me. And it's bummed, which is why I got so stoked about God of War, continuing it and leaving into it. One person said, I once heard a man relate the advice that you have to show your scars. This advice essentially boils down to you have to show vulnerability. Not hard to see why he chose the former way to express it. This is interesting because this was a major fight I had with people when I did modeling. I had a stipulation. You don't touch my scars. You don't airbrush out my scars. I've got a sizable scar from an emergency appendectomy that's like twice the size because it had exploded. Right? I've got some chickenpox scars. Again, when I almost died, I'm allergic to the chickenpox virus. Um, but there's little things here and there. I've got a nasty one on my thumb from a cut in a set building accident. But it's like, you don't touch those. I earned those. Those are survival markings. Those are XP. You do not Photoshop those out. And that's why I did chainmail bikinis and jungle girl things, because they fit, right? I lost a cover because of that. And with men, it's scars, show your scars, vulnerability. With women, it's show your scars. You've done some living. You're not perfect. You're not flawless. So show your scars is a good one. And that's sort of a building thing that really, really touches on the gendered socialization divide, right? And the fact that it means something so different. And that, to me, my relationship with scars is I've been through some shit. Which I think that's part of the reason I like Kratos, because he's got the one here and he's got the one here. And fun fact, I went to the God of War 3 launch in Kratos makeup, complete with the prosthetic scar. I did it with wax and latex. Boy, did I get dirty looks for some people. The models, who were the living Greek statues, loved it. But yeah, opinion was mixed among PlayStation PR people as to whether what I did was appropriate. Fuck it, man. Super fan. Kratos is my dude. But yeah, scars. One of the things I loved about the Witcher short stories is how they describe scars on men and women. And the fact that they had women with scars was so important to me in the stories. And I admit I was really bummed when they changed Triss Marigold for the games. I grew to really like Triss as a characterization in the games, but that change pissed me off. And that's why I think it was so, I find it so weird that people get so upset now. And that was the sort of thing that, because guys were getting nudity, like, oh, she's naked, she's boobs. It doesn't matter that they changed the character. It mattered to me. And so I get why people get upset when there are changes. I just remember the times I was shouted down when I have an issue about something. And this has created empathy for me, where you have to be willing to listen to somebody else's pain to expect anybody to give a shit about yours. And that's a real struggle on social media, because you have to sort of maintain order and really set boundaries and really like not take shit. But at the same time, if somebody comes to me straight, right, not in a sexual way, like comes at me head on and just talks about their feelings, the comment sections are there, because yeah, I get it. It is very difficult to show vulnerability sometimes. And it's part of the reason I do it. It's part of the reason that I do say when things bother me, and I do say that hurt. And I show those moments of, it's calculated vulnerability, but it's still authentic. If something really bothers me, I'm not going to talk about it in an open forum. I only talk about stuff I know that if I get attacked, because I will, it's not going to destroy me. But I do that. I'm honest about things that bother me, because if I don't set the example, people are going to feel like it's not positive when they do it. So that's the method to my madness. This is a long comment, but it's interesting in that line. Lots of people like to opine on the facts that most men have a deficit of emotional range as compared to women. Not so many like to ask the question, why do men seemingly have a deficit of emotional range as compared to women? Pause on the comment. This is something that bugs me about research into gender and gender norms and observed gendered behavior. It's just that. People say, oh, this is what we see. So they treat it as, well, it must be genetic. Not necessarily. We really do need to ask why there's the differences, They go on. Is it a skewed social standard? Sure, that has something to do with it. Why is there a skewed social standard? I like the way this comment is going. Is it because primary caregivers tend to attend to and give comfort to their children differently based on sex? There's a bit of research around this. Guess what it says? I can confirm this stuff. I've read this stuff. I worded it differently, but I'll add. So the initial onset of the problem starts in very early childhood, and yet we are focused almost exclusively on how to fix men instead of fixing the cause. Don't get me wrong here. I think many men, myself included, have work to do to understand and undo the damage done to us by caregivers, social and social norms. But we are operating in the dark without a map. This has been the norm and the expectation for so long. There isn't much guidance that matches well to the target. Like you said, therapy and psychology is heavily feminized now, but without addressing the root cause of this, without directly and harshly addressing the empathy gap, we're just going to keep raising our men into this, only to need to undo it later. And I will add the sides. They actually did an experiment where they dressed girl babies up like boys and boy babies up like girls. Even the kids' own parents nurtured the girls dressed up like boys less and nurtured the boys dress up like girls more. Their own parents treated their kids differently based on just gender presentation. Yeah. So why is there so much pushback in addressing anything that involves countering or calling out the empathy gap? Why do we constantly tell men from cradle to grave that they're less deserving of support? Is men's willingness to express emotions outwardly related to their perception of how much the audience is going to give a shit? Like I said before, I think it'd be obvious. Even when people agree that society empathizes less with men than with women, the difficulty in getting anyone in normie spaces to acknowledge that this patterning might be causal is like pulling teeth. I hear a lot of the RP community say something to the effect of, the common narrative is, if it negatively affects women, it is society at fault. We all must band together to fix it. If it negatively affects men, they've done it to themselves and they need to fix it for themselves. To apply that even if women may have culpability in something, blame will always be deflected to first society at large and by proxy men, because men built society. But either way, the implication that women's general attitudes or social expectations may have a negative effect on men should not mean that women should be held accountable for it, just food for thought. And I mean, this is my weirdness, hi Scout, about relating to media, because I tend to relate to certain male characters in media more than female characters in media. I'm not going to talk about Kratos again. I kind of am. I have been really bothered by that very thing that, because I'm putting myself in the shoes of male characters, I do see the difference, right? And the one comment somebody made about the women is that if a male character had done what Captain Marvel did in her movie, just blasted the antagonist in a fit of pique, like he was surrendered, he was walking away, just blasted him, it would not have been seen as a heroic act. Now, Tony Stark's Thanos snap may complicate that a little bit, but it's still a fair point. In a heroic male movie, the whole thing would be, oh no, you show mercy, right? And that double standard wasn't lost on me, but it was the Disney Plus Loki show. I just flipped my fucking shit. He's another one of my boys, right? He's the only guy in media that is me who doesn't have a beard. It's weird. He's the one clean-shaven dude. But the fact that they used psychological and physical torture of him, and they've done it all through. They take a guy with daddy issues who's been invalidated his whole life, mind-controlled, and it turns out was forced into the position by, spoiler, Kang controlling fucking time, and they think it's funny to put him in a torture loop. That really bothered me because I related to it. I connected that to my experiences of people get one thing they think they can get about me. Oh, he cut Sif's hair. Oh, that justifies kicking him in the fucking balls again and again and again. And yeah, some things I've gone through have felt like that. Like, people just won't fucking let it go. And, you know, people are way rougher on me than most women because I don't read female the same way. And so, you know, people will be fucking merciless on me in ways that, you know, if it happened to, say, Anita Sarkeesian or Keffels, there'd be all these articles about how horribly harassed they were. Right? Whereas I just get kicked in the fucking balls again and again and again because somebody's hair got cut. It's fucking hair. It'll grow back. Let's compare the two things. It really bothered me. And, you know, then the way, you know, his affections are toyed with and all, like, kind of shit. And people were like, what's your problem? It's funny at first. And then, you know, people came to my way of thinking, and part of the reason I take so much shit is people don't know what to do with the fact that I get upset when shit happens to dudes in things too, because I'm identifying with them equally. That part of the reason I got so excited about She-Hulk is like, I identify with a woman in media. Yeah, that did not go well. But, you know, there's an example of if she had been a male character and said all that shit in the first episode, everybody would have just been, oh, well, it's the beginning of his story. He's a jerk. He's this, that, you know, Iron Man, Doctor Strange, Star-Lord. It's a double standard, right? And you can't say one group gets it better or worse. Both are getting shit on. And if we compare it, it's not right. It's really not right. And it's contributing to the empathy gap. And that's why I talk about this, even though I get kicked in the proverbial balls over and over and over again for a relatively minor fucking transgression, because eventually the world catches up to me. It always happens. You know, now that we have Ghost of Tsushima and God of War and like PlayStation exclusives that make people feel and you know, are being made into Hollywood movies and shows and stuff like that, you notice there's less talk about The Last of Us 2. Yeah, it happens. And because I was in that fucking games journalism swamp, I know it's going to happen. Like, I see opinion shift. The one that got it for me was Heavenly Sword. I loved Heavenly Sword. I thought it really did. I mean, it innovated motion capture, for sure. But it was a PS3 title, so it was okay to shit on it. And it was short, even though it was intended to be replayed. And Call of Duty single-player campaigns were the exact same fucking length back in the day. But the games press en masse decided it was fine to shit on Heavenly Sword, even though it was a game starring two women and it was not a white European fantasy setting. And these same fuckers that dumped on that game now lecture the rest of us on treatment of fucking women in media. And I sat here and I watched it like that's why I had the fucking watcher back there. I sat there, voiced by fucking, oh, what's his name? Jeffrey Wright. I sat there, like, imagine me sounding like Jeffrey Wright right now. It sounds way better. Watching it happen. Just observing the whole fucking, watching these people rewrite history. And they did it again on Dad of War. The first Norse God of War game. Do you remember that? Before it came out, it's going to be violent. It's going to be mistreating women. It's bad. It's this. It's toxic masculinity. And now, oh, it's so powerful. Fuck you. You prejudged it. I was right. They were wrong. But there's no penalty for being wrong. You do well in games discourse if you say whatever the Overton window answer is at any given time, whether it's right or wrong, and if it ages poorly, it doesn't matter. It was right at the time. So you don't get kicked in the balls over and over and over again. And I do think, this is going somewhere, this isn't just a rant. I do think that part of it is a certain pantomimed shadow puppet masculine performance that games journalists tend to be. I'm not like other guys. But inside, there's this real sense of self-loathing because they're not, manly men. Part of the problem I had in games journalism is I'd be the one going, boom, on the table, right? I'd be the one going, fucking no. Oh, you're so aggressive. You're so aggressive. This is journalism, because I came from music and other types of reporting, and there you've got to be aggressive. You got to push your way in. You got to be forceful. You have to speak with authority and persuade. But in games journalism, oh, so aggressive. Oh, she's scary. And that's where I realized these fucking guys, they talk about female characters, but they cannot handle one right in front of them. They don't just get scared. They get scared and then they get resentful and they push back. And so, I'm coming at it from the other side where it's like, allegedly, I'm everything you guys claim to want in this business. Now, I will say that it's still better treatment than television or film or anything like that. I will say that. But film and television aren't the ones saying, this is our ideal woman, and then freaking out and the ball kick loop over and over again when it's an actual person right in front of them. It is such bullshit. And I really do believe that it's about their own relationship to masculinity. And so they're in a room with a woman whose proverbial balls are bigger than theirs. They can't handle it. And all of that displaces and deflects to, which is why I talked about emotional intelligence in the second video and perspective taking. Because this was my cope. It's like, why are they doing this other than they just fucking hate women? And what I realized, these guys hate themselves. It isn't about me. I'm not real to them. They're so stuck in their own self kicking the balls loop that everything is about what they are and who they are. And they must feel, women can come in here in terms of games knowledge and strength of opinion, but they must always be somewhat above. Or it's like you've cut their balls off. They go from freaking like, Jon Snow, to Varys. Just the minute you have a strong opinion about something that you can back up with facts. It happened again and again and again and again and again and again. And yes, it's anecdotal. It's only my experience. People can say, well, maybe you were just a bitch. Every fucking time. And the thing is, I see women in games who are actually not nice people and backstab and do horrible things. They get ahead. And that's where sort of the negative beliefs about women come in. That's what women are supposed to be like, duplicitous and manipulative and, use sex to get what they want. So those women get ahead because it's expected. Me, I come in, stealth Kratos. No. And because I come at it from performing insufficiently feminine, I can perspective take and imagine what it's like to go through life not conforming to those masculine norms, right? It's probably equally punitive. And that's where we get into that vulnerability and that, why? Why is there an empathy gap? Why do men have reduced emotional language? Well, because that's what society expects and rewards, It's not inherent. It's not innate. If you look at, the writings, say in Victorian times, the emotional language was significantly greater. Now we get, I feel that you were wrong. That's not an I feel statement. That's a statement of, that's something that can be challenged. But I said I feel. I don't fucking care. There was no feeling after that. But these fuckers get away with that shit because they said I feel. It's the spirit of the law. It's just a feeling. I just feel that you're wrong. I can't prove it, but I feel it. No, you think I am. You think I'm wrong. You don't feel I'm wrong. Wrong is not a feeling. What the fuck? But they get away with it. Because every other fucking... a whole bunch of things went through my mind. But it's a whole office full of guys that'll back them up, and me. Appeal to popularity, right? It's a fallacy, but it tends to be what runs things. And that's why I much prefer debate on facts. That's why I will listen to one person who argues something really, really well. And that's why I do think that, and that's what I'm coming in for a landing here. With the stuff we're developing, we've had a lot of conversations about moving forward with like the additional content, like the seminars and the workshops and the bubbles and all the links in the description box. And one of the things we are working on is a series on communication skills, but we realize that we have to do listening skills, but before that, we have to get people centered. We have to get people in a place that they feel stable and secure enough, because if you're not there, then you can't listen. You're just not capable. Your brain is freaking out. You're in reactive mode. So we can teach people to listen all they want, but if we don't get them settled, then we have the empathy gap. And, instead of listening to understand, it's listening to respond. And that we've lost it right out of the gate. And you guys know I don't like to do that. So what's some stuff that you guys would like? We're going to do a one-off on manipulation. That's going to be a panel discussion with questions afterwards. But what's some other stuff that you'd like to see covered as topics in that kind of format? Or basically it's like a panel discussion or like a PowerPoint for 45 minutes and then 45 minutes of questions. What would you want to see in that? That's where I'll leave that. That's my question. That's my feedback. I'm looking for you. So help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/Leanna K. I know I didn't touch on two women talking at all this week, but that's okay. Thanks for watching and have a great weekend.